Hello, my name is Jared Ludlow, the Publications Director at the BYU Religious Studies Center, your weekly resource for gospel scholarship. And today we'll be talking about some resources that can accompany your Come Follow Me reading for April 18th through 24th, which covers Exodus 18 through 20, All That the Lord Has Spoken We Will Do. The first article is called Seeing God in His Temple by Andrew Skinner, who recently retired from the BYU Ancient Scripture Department. And this comes from a Sperry presentation that he gave. And in it, he talks about theophanies, or the appearance of God to mortals. And particularly talks about the interactions with God at the Ohel Moed, or the tent of meeting, what we often call the tabernacle. And he also then traces some of these experiences up through the temple that will be built later. And so he talks about seeing the face of God and how these locations are God's dwelling place. It's a place of pilgrimage for his worshipers to come and to seek his face. And he concludes with the notion that seeking the face of God was a quest of mortality. And so it's something still we as worshipers of God can seek in our own religious lives. The second article is called The Restoration as Covenant Renewal by David Seeley from the Ancient Scripture Department at BYU. It's also from a Sperry presentation. In this article, he talks about how a covenant is an eternal principle. And so he reveals a lot of the ancient covenants. He breaks down their structure, some of their content. And so he kind of follows a trajectory from the Mosaic covenant to Joshua renewing that covenant with the Israelites in the Promised Land, King Josiah renewing a covenant after finding a book of the law, even connects it up to Jesus and his teachings about the law and the restoration in our day. And so specifically, he looks at the Doctrine and Covenants and sees that as a document of the covenant. And so at the end of this article, he gives a chart that looks at the structure of each of these different covenants and pulls out how they follow the ancient covenant pattern. The third article is called New and Everlasting, the Relationship Between Gospel Covenants in History. It's written by three authors, Kerry Muhlestein, Joshua Sears, and Avram Shannon, all in the Ancient Scripture Department at BYU. And this comes from the Religious Educator. And similar to the previous article I just talked about, it also reviews various covenants over time. And specifically, it looks at some of the continuities and the changes between these covenants, because the term itself, New and Everlasting Covenant, both highlights that there's new aspects to each dispensation and the covenants that are made, as well as everlasting elements, things that continue. And so they trace some of the differences between the Israelites to the Nephites, even ancient saints to Latter-day Saints, and looks at some of the unity among all these covenants. And so basically their premise is that it's the same covenant adapted to different circumstances and different time periods.